Most iPhone users are making the same mistake every single day. And the worst part is, they have no idea they're doing it. You unlock your phone hundreds of times a week. You scroll, you text, you take photos, you stream. And while you're doing all of that, your iPhone is quietly accumulating something in the background that's slowing it down, draining its battery faster than it should, compromising your privacy in ways you haven't consented to, and leaving security doors wide open that you didn't. Minutes. You only need to do it once a week. And by the end of this, you're going to realize why this is the single most impactful iPhone habit you're not building, but should be. Let's start with the thing nobody talks about because it sounds too simple to be real. Restarting your iPhone, not shutting it down when the battery dies, not doing a factory reset, just a proper clean weekly restart, powering down completely and powering back on. If you haven't restarted your iPhone in more than a week, right now, your phone is running dozens of processes in the background that have never been cleared. Apps that you opened days ago and closed are still holding pieces of memory. System processes that started running after a notification arrived are still active. Temporary files from websites, from streaming sessions, from apps that misbehaved are all sitting in RAM-consuming resources that your phone could be using to run the things you actually want to use right now. Your iPhone's RAM, random access memory, is its short-term working space. Think of it like a physical desk. The more things piled on that desk, the harder it is to find what you need and the slower everything moves. iOS is genuinely good at memory management. Apple has engineered it to handle RAM far more efficiently than most operating systems, which is part of why iPhones feel smooth with less raw RAM than many Android competitors. But iOS is not perfect. Over days of continuous use, processes accumulate. Memory leaks from poorly written apps pile up quietly. Background tasks that were supposed to be temporary become permanent squatters. And the result is an iPhone that feels just a little slower than it should. Apps that take slightly longer to open, multitasking that's slightly less smooth, animations that feel just a fraction less crisp than they did when you first turned the phone on that day. A full restart clears all of that. When your iPhone powers down completely and boots back up fresh, the RAM is wiped clean, every background process that had no business still running gets terminated. Every memory leak from every poorly coded app gets flushed out, and your phone comes back up running the way it's supposed to, fast, clean, and with all its resources available for the things you actually need. The difference is not always dramatic on a brand new iPhone 16 with generous RAM headroom, but on an iPhone 13, 14, or even a 15 that you've been running hard for months without a restart, the difference before and after can be genuinely noticeable. Apps launch faster. Switching between apps is snappier. The whole experience feels like you've just picked up a device that's been sitting fresh out of the box. One test: restart your phone right now if you haven't done it in over a week, and pay attention to how it feels for the next hour. Most people notice it immediately. But the weekly restart isn't only about performance. There's a security angle here that most people completely miss. When rogue processes, whether from a misbehaving app, compromised website you visited, or a piece of adware that slipped past the App Store's filters, embed themselves in your phone's active memory, a restart terminates them. It's not a substitute for real security practices, but it closes a specific window of vulnerability that keeping your phone running continuously for weeks or months leaves wide open. Apple's own support documentation has historically recommended regular restarts as part of general device maintenance. Your iPhone was designed to be restarted regularly. It was not designed to run continuously for months without interruption. Now here's where the weekly habit gets genuinely powerful, because the restart is really just the beginning. While your phone is restarting, or right after it boots back up, you do the second piece, the battery health check. Go to Settings, then Battery Health and Charging. What you're looking for is your maximum capacity percentage. A brand new iPhone starts at 100%. Apple designs its batteries to retain 80% of their original capacity at 500 full charge cycles under normal conditions. If you're seeing a number below 80%, your battery has passed its designed threshold and Apple considers it eligible for service. Below 80% is when you start noticing real-world battery life issues that no software tweak can fully fix. The phone will literally throttle its own performance in some cases to prevent unexpected shutdowns caused by a degraded battery that can no longer deliver the power the processor demands. Checking this number once a week takes 10 seconds, but here's why weekly matters more than you might think. Battery health doesn't drop in a straight, predictable line. It holds steady for a long time and then drops more noticeably as the chemistry inside the battery reaches certain thresholds. Checking monthly might mean you miss the window where a slight adjustment to your charging habits could slow the degradation. Checking weekly builds awareness of the trend, which lets you make decisions, like enabling optimized battery charging if you haven't already, like avoiding keeping your phone between 80% and 100% for extended periods, like not leaving it on a fast charger overnight when standard charging will do. Heat is one of the biggest enemies of battery longevity. Apple recommends keeping your iPhone in environments between 0 degrees C and 35 degrees for optimal performance. Consistent exposure to heat above that range accelerates the chemical degradation inside the battery in ways that are permanent and cumulative. The weekly check is your early warning system, and while you're in the battery settings, go one level deeper. Hit the battery usage section that shows you which apps have been consuming the most battery over the last week. This is genuinely useful information that most iPhone users ignore entirely. What you're looking for are apps that are consuming a disproportionate share of your battery compared to how much you actually use them. If a social media app you barely touch this week is showing up as your second biggest battery drain, something is wrong. It's running in the background more than it should be. It's pinging servers, refreshing content, tracking location, or doing something else it has no business doing while it sits in the background. This view gives you the data to make an informed decision about whether that app deserves to keep running in the background at all. Now let's talk about the third piece of the weekly habit. And this one is genuinely the most important one from a privacy standpoint. App permissions audit. Go to settings, scroll down to privacy and security, and open it up. What you're looking at is a complete map of every sensitive capability on your iPhone. Your location, your microphone, your camera, your contacts, your calendar, your photos, your Bluetooth, and which apps have been granted access to each one. Most people set these permissions once when they first installed an app, tapped allow without thinking too hard about it, and never looked at them again. Here's the problem with that. Apps often request access once and retain it indefinitely unless you manually revoke it. An app you installed 6 months ago and barely use anymore still has access to your location, running quietly in the background, tracking your movements and sending that data to servers you know nothing about. A free game that needed your microphone access once for a voice feature you never used is still holding onto that permission, sitting in the background with an open door. To your mic, many free apps monetize not through their stated purpose, but through the data they collect from exactly these permissions. Location data especially. Your detailed, time-stamped movement patterns are worth real money to data brokers and advertisers. And right now, multiple apps on your phone may be building that profile without you realizing you ever gave them permission to do it. The weekly check doesn't need to be exhaustive every single time. You don't need to audit every single app every week. What you do instead is spot check. Look at location services and review which apps have access. Ask yourself honestly, does this app need to know where I am to do what I use it for? A navigation app does. A flashlight app does not. A weather app needs your general location, but probably doesn't need your precise GPS coordinates down to the exact building you're sitting in. Switch anything that doesn't need always access to while using the app instead. And for apps that genuinely have no business knowing your location at all, revoke it completely. You can always add it back if something breaks, but most of the time nothing breaks because the app didn't need that access in the first place. Research from privacy organizations consistently shows that a significant percentage of free apps monetize primarily through location data sales to third-party brokers. Data you handed over the moment you tapped allow without reading the fine print. Pay special attention to the significant locations feature buried inside location services under system services. This is a feature that keeps a detailed log of places your iPhone has determined you visit frequently. Your home, your workplace, your regular routes. While Apple says this data stays on your device and is used for features like personalized maps and travel time suggestions, the average user has no idea this record even exists. You can disable it entirely by going to Settings, Privacy, and Security, Location Services, System Services, and toggling off significant locations. The microphone and camera permissions deserve their own attention. In the battery and privacy settings, iOS now shows you persistent indicators when an app is actively using your camera or microphone. An orange dot for the mic, a green dot for the camera. But that only tells you what's happening at that exact moment. The permissions audit tells you which apps have the theoretical ability to access these things at any time you haven't explicitly restricted them. Any app that has microphone access, and that you haven't consciously chosen to grant it for an ongoing reason, is worth a second look. Same with camera. These are the two most intimate sensors on your device, and the permissions around them deserve actual attention rather than the reflexive tap allow that most people give them. The fourth piece of the weekly habit is checking for iOS updates. Go to Settings, then General, then Software Update. This takes literally 5 seconds. If there's an update available, you should understand what it is before deciding whether to install it. Apple releases 2 types of updates on a rolling basis. Major version updates with new features and smaller point releases that are almost always primarily security patches, closing vulnerabilities that have been discovered and reported. The critical thing to understand is that when Apple releases a security patch, they are simultaneously publishing information about the vulnerability that patch fixes. The moment that information is public, attackers who haven't yet updated their tools to exploit it begin working on doing exactly that. Running an unpatched iPhone for weeks after a security update is available means running a device with a known, publicly documented vulnerability. Apple regularly patches what are called zero-day vulnerabilities, security flaws that were being actively exploited in the wild before Apple even knew about them. These are not theoretical risks. These are real attacks happening to real users on real iPhones. In 2025 alone, Apple released multiple emergency patches for zero-day exploits targeting iPhones across all recent hardware generations. Running an unpatched iPhone isn't paranoia territory. It's basic maintenance, the digital equivalent of not driving a car for months after you've been notified about a safety recall. The patch exists. The vulnerability is publicly known. The only question is whether yours is fixed. The fifth and final piece of the weekly habit is the one that takes maybe 3 minutes and saves you from the single most common digital disaster that happens to iPhone users: checking your storage and cleaning out what doesn't belong there anymore. Go to Settings, then General, then iPhone Storage. What you're looking at is a complete breakdown of everything consuming space on your device, organized by category. Photos and videos are almost always the biggest consumer for most people. If you use iCloud Photos, your device should be storing optimized versions while full resolution files live in the cloud, but this only works correctly if iCloud Photos is actually turned on and your iCloud storage plan has enough room. If your iCloud is full, your iPhone stops syncing. If your iPhone stops syncing, your full resolution photos exist only on your device. And if that device is lost, stolen, or broken, those photos are gone permanently. Check the recommendation section inside iPhone Storage. iOS actually analyzes your usage patterns and makes specific, personalized suggestions for freeing up space. Apps you haven't opened in months that are taking up gigabytes, large attachments sitting in messages that you'll never look at. Again, videos in your recently deleted folder that you've already decided to delete, but that are still taking up space during their 30-day holding period. These are intelligent, targeted suggestions that take about 90 seconds to act on and routinely free up multiple gigabytes without deleting anything you actually want. Here's why all 5 of these things need to be a once-a-week habit and not a once-a-year spring cleaning. Your iPhone is not a static device. It changes constantly. New apps get installed, existing apps get updated, and those updates sometimes add new permission requests or new background behaviors. iOS updates change how certain features work. Your battery chemistry degrades by fractions of a percent with every charge cycle. Security vulnerabilities get discovered and patched on a timeline that is measured in weeks, not months. A device you checked last month has meaningfully changed since then. The weekly habit isn't about obsessing over your phone. It's about staying ahead of changes that are happening, whether you pay attention to them or not. The people who keep their iPhones running fast, who extend their battery life by months or even years beyond the average, who never find out the hard way that an app had been quietly tracking their location for 2 years, they're not doing anything magical. They're, not power users with advanced technical knowledge. They're people who built one simple weekly habit and stuck to it. 10 minutes, once a week. Restart, battery check, permissions audit, software update check, and a quick storage review. 5 things that take less time combined than most people spend on a single social media scroll session. Your iPhone is the most personal and most powerful computing device most people own. It knows where you are, who you talk to, what you search for, what you buy, what you look like, and what your voice sounds like. It deserves 10 minutes of deliberate attention every week. And you, using it every single day, deserve to have it running at its actual best. Not some degraded version of it that's gotten slower and more compromised over months of being ignored. Start this Sunday. Set a reminder right now if you have to. Because the best time to build this habit was when you first got your iPhone. The second best time is this week.